Hello fellow modelers, in this video I'm going to build another small diorama, and this time it will be inspired by a Vietnam War. I start with an extruded polystyrene block, as usual. You can use ordinary polystyrene without problems, but this one is more solid. I know it's weirdly tall for diorama, but I want to make a bunker and underground corridors for Vietcong soldiers. I have for Vietnam ground with nice acrylic ground texture from MIG. If isn't available in your country, you can mix sawdust, plaster, water and orange dry pigment. I made similar homemade ground texture in previous videos. The acrylic textures dry slower than plaster, thus you have more time to add small stones or modify the final look with fine gravel. I do not have any idea how to create a Vietnam landscape, so I'm looking forward to the result. So first I will try to add some vegetation. The static grass is always suitable for beginning if you do not know what add first. I am using this time 12 mm long fibers. Therefore I do not need static grass applicator and I simply create turfs in my fingers. The vegetation made only from static grass looks very dull. Thus I have for this purpose a lot of different jungle leaves made from paper. So a test sample is not the worst, and to be honest, at this moment I realized and started to believe that I can finish this diorama. I'm always so skeptical about new projects. I cover ugly polystyrene with a balsa wood planks. I prefer this material because it is soft and you can easily cut out holes or smooth edges. Now I'm removing polystyrene protrusions with a sandpaper. And I glue balsa wood with an ordinary PVA glue. I told you that balsa wood is very soft, thus I can cut holes to it only with a sharp hobby knife. You saw in almost all my previous dioramas that I left the frame around the whole diorama, but the optically looks better if you unify it with the rest of the surface. I got this tip from fellow modeler, so thank you for your comments or ideas. Now I'm adding more static grass and vegetation. If you apply it with your hands, it looks less uniform. You probably cannot find suitable exotic leaves in Europe forest, like moss, which I used in my previous dioramas. Therefore I am using paper leaves from ModelScene this time. They have laser cut sets also for small 72 scale, so exactly what I need. I only do not know how much leaves I will need. I will paint them later. If you have a better imagination, you can paint and shade each leaf before applying on diorama. I also think suitable is to add some larger vegetation. I am creating a small palm tree from all the dry root and paper bulrush set. However, you can cut out leaves from ordinary paper sheet with scissors, because the shape isn't difficult. Now the whole thing is about editing more details and make the diverse vegetation. And as usual, I'm gluing some moss which I borrowed from a local forest. I think after some tons of paper details, I finally learned how to work with them. This paper fern looks very flat, but you can modify it to more realistic shapes with the sharp tweezers. I hate the beginnings because of my limited imagination, but when you have some basic shapes done, then it is easy to add more and more details. I think for 72 scale it looks quite acceptable. So, it's time for Vietcong. I have relatively old figures from Italy, which are very simplified but at least are made from processable plastic. The second set with US Special Forces were worse. I am drilling small holes and making the figure less monolithic this way. And I use for this purpose Proxon Micromod, which is a very versatile tool. You can remove residual plastic dust with a thin glue. I use for painting water-based acrylic colors. They are odorless and not toxic, so good change from lacquer colors that I use for airbrush. I am painting a few more layers for shading with lighter and darker shades. I think in 72 scale it is not the worst, but these miniatures do not have a lot of details, so it was hard to paint them. I promised you some shading on leaves. Thus I'm spraying a shading with an airbrush and dark green color. The Vietcong had simple strategy of a partisan war. It included bunkers, ambushes and terrifying booby traps. I am making one of these also on my diorama. It was straightforward. Soldiers dug a hole and stepped into the ground a few sharp metal stakes. And from Forrest Gump movie, you know that in the Vietnam were a lot of rain. So I pour some resin water into the hole. I only mix it with a dry brown pigment to make it dirtier. So the diorama is almost finished. I only think that the paper looks very dull, and that is because it is matte. So it is nothing easier than paint each leaf with a gloss varnish. And with these US figures is diorama done. It was not so difficult in the end, and probably the result isn't worse for my first jungle diorama. So that is all. Thank you for watching and see you next time.